It is Friday, December 15th, 2017. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And it was a very, very satisfying day, I must say. I finally am getting on a trend where I'm starting to get things done. And honestly, I really want to start off by I don't want to, apologize, because really, I think my being pissed was justified, and I think my reactions to it were justified as well. But I would like to thank the operator for the ATM in the mall. He did me a good solid today. We've got some stuff resolved, and I was able to get a cryptocurrency transaction done without Bitcoin. This is not a new experience for me, but in all honesty, it's something that I never really anticipated needing to do, other than, of course, with my Verge holdings when I plan to spend them as dollars. However, other than that, I never imagined that, I don't know. I was watching this whole fucking Bitcoin Cash thing and segregated witnesses just pretty much a victim, because I didn't really feel like I could do anything about it except pay the ass rapey fee and try and make bigger withdrawals in order to make it worth it. And so, that kind of thing was weighing on me a little bit. And then I looked at the ATM the last time that I tried to do a Bitcoin transaction on it, and it's really funny, man. This whole fucking series of events is just so weird. Like, I'd been doing Bitcoin transactions with this fucking ATM this whole time, no problem, right? I go to it, for some reason, I can't do a transaction with the wallet that I have available with me. So I'm like, well, fuck. So that's one trip down. I take the funds and I start thinking about it, because I see the emblems on there for like Monero and Litecoin and Ethereum and Dash, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. These other coins have smaller transaction fees, or smaller miner fees. So maybe I should try transacting with one of them instead, and just kind of get around all this bullshit. And so that's what I did. I made a Bitcoin Cash wallet. Actually, I made a Coinami wallet on my, I think I might have made a Bitcoin Cash wallet too, but I made a Coinami wallet, and then I put the Bitcoin Cash in it, and then for some reason or another, they didn't have Bitcoin Cash there as an option, so I'm like, well, fuck. So I looked at Coinami, and that fucking wallet is awesome. I gotta tell you, it was a really educational experience, because I ran through the gamut, and I mean, seriously, I could have got 3 how-to videos out of this whole experience. I'm dead serious. So, I'm looking at this fucking Coinami wallet, and it's got all these options, and I realize I can actually invest in Ethereum ICOs directly through this fucking wallet. And it brought back to me the international scope of cryptocurrencies once more, because there are some exchanges that I have access to that do the whole ICO thing, but there's been a bit of resistance with regard to including those in a lot of U.S. available markets. So anyway, I was tripped out by that. I'm like, oh wow. So I look at it and I notice that it's got Dash on there, and I'm like, well, fuck it. I'll take this money and I'll swap it out for Dash, and then I'll put it through the ATM and I'll get my money. Well, that didn't work out quite right. For whatever reason, the internet connection at the mall is especially sucky, and it's very, very selective how and when it works, right? And so, I mean, they must have been playing like online bingo in fucking Hometown Buffet or something like that. Anyway, so I get the swap over by coming home, right? And doing the fucking transfer completes the moment I walk through the door. I look at the phone, and It just completed. I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm thinking I'm going to go back after I've taken this money and put it on a device that I know will work within the mall, right? So there's another problem though. My device is a POS, and meaning piece of shit, not point of sale. And it doesn't allow me to have the Play Store on there, so I can't just download Coinami. And so I download I look it up online and I figure out how to download the Play Store to this fucking thing. I get the Play Store installed, and it doesn't want to install Coinami. So that's out. And I'm like, well, the only other wallet I would probably trust is like the official Dash wallet. So I download the Dash wallet to it, scan the QR code for it from my other device, send, less than 5 seconds later, it's in my goddamn Dash account, or my Dash wallet, on my other device. It's confirmed. It's ready to go. I can fucking do a transaction right now with Dash out of this device. No problem. So, I'm like, okay. You know, the last couple Bitcoin transactions, actually the last 4 Bitcoin transactions that I've made in the mall through the ATM took so fucking long that I felt like I should have had a tent and maybe a sleeping bag to wait for that first confirmation. Okay? And the fact of the matter is that the guy that runs the thing, he's been doing me a solid in forwarding me the transactions. And I mean, really, that's a major liability that he's taken up for me there. You know, and so it's like, it was because I showed the first couple of times that, yes, you can trust me not to do that, that he was gracious enough to allow the kind of shit to go on. But, you know, he understood it better than I did as far as, like, the depth of where I'm really experiencing the most friction. And he explained it today. I was like, oh, you know, that makes a lot more sense. You know, that most of the fee isn't really him. It's the fucking exchange that he's dealing with is asking such a high premium, plus on top of his fee, it makes it a bit more. Or actually, I think he was saying the miner fee was really expensive. Anyway, it was one of the two. But the miner fee, that was the one he actually referred to the most. And I would imagine, I heard today it was like $24 for the average transaction. Give me a fucking break, man. That's fucking criminal. It's fucking criminal. I mean, so anyway, this whole experience, last couple weeks, you know, it's been like a college course. I could make a college syllabus with the experiences that I've had over the last month for dealing with cryptocurrencies in this time. See, I do it because I know it's not always going to be this way. And I mean, I knew the same fucking thing the first time I got on the internet. The first time I got on the internet, it was like $5 a fucking minute or some outrageous amount of money through AOL or I think it was like $5 an hour or something like that to be online. And it wasn't until we received the first bill that I understood that was that really bad. And then the next one, it wasn't, but I mean, I knew intuitively this is not going to stay the same. They're going to experience so much of a drop off in users that this price paradigm is going to change. It's going to alter radically, and they're going to be able to keep people on. And what started happening is they were giving people like a free month with those stupid SCDs, and they would just make up bullshit account information, right? And be online for free for a month, you know? And just do the same thing over and over and over and over again. And they get their year of access for free through AOL, right? Well, I'm sure that AOL caught on to this and they're saying, dude, we're losing so much money in printing these fucking CDs, even though we're still way profitable with this current price model. We're just experiencing too much loss to gain it. So let's go ahead and cut this part of our business and we'll open it up to, you know, just free sign on. You don't even need a fucking CD, man. You just call us up, we'll sign you on, and we'll bump it down to $20 a month. And that was golden for everybody for a long time. But the point being is I knew it would change, and then it went lower and lower. You get where I'm going with this, is that eventually it will change. And at one point it was actually free. Kmart was offering free online access, right, through their server. You just had to have this stupid little pop-up in the corner of your browser. That was a real thing. That was pre-net neutrality. So, you fucking people that want to fearmonger about net neutrality, think about that one. Kmart, at one time, offered free ISP service in exchange for a stupid little fucking pop-up thing in the corner of your browser. It's called Blue Light, or some shit like that. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw down into some music. We haven't even done our first dance. And as far as what to throw down, I haven't really considered it, but you know what? This song is appropriate as all hell, so we're just going to go ahead and throw it down. Pulse of the Maggots. First dance here on Coin Metal. And that was Prong with Rude Awakening off of the album of the same name. And it's such a good album that the computer decided to follow it up with the next song on its own end. Gotta love that. Anyway, with regard to today, I did not get my ass kicked at jiu-jitsu. I did, however, work out. I've been trying to at least keep up my workouts, because I plan on going back like probably tomorrow and getting back on the mat again. And so I didn't want to do so without having done any working out, because that's always very, very painful for me. And yeah, I just didn't want to put myself through that. So, I've been doing like solo drills and stuff, trying to maintain a little bit of core integrity. Although I don't know how successful I've actually been at that. I know I've probably put on a pound or two. I mean, dude, just to let you guys know, man, I was working very, very hard on some personal stuff, and I kind of put everything else to the side. I think I gotta find some better way to budget, as far as my time goes. Only because I don't know, I feel like I could be spending more time trading probably. But I also need to get out and fish every once in a while, because you know what, if you can't enjoy your time, why do what you're doing? Anyway, I was talking about earlier the issues with getting my money into TP, as I've taken to calling it, terrestrial paper. And it was a voyage getting here. It was, like I said, I could definitely create the syllabus for a college course in interacting with real world finance. And I mean, I could tell you, based on my experience, 1,000,001 ways that we can improve the process of helping people get their funds into and out of this space. And I think that seems to be the biggest challenge for a lot of people still, is figuring out exactly how to get in. I mean, it's not really all that difficult, and if you do any amount of investigation, you can kind of figure it out. But it still seems to be a bit of a challenge. I talked to the operator for the ATM today, and he was saying, I asked him why he wasn't having Bitcoin Cash on there, and he was saying that people were actually trying to buy Bitcoin, but buying Bitcoin Cash. And personally, I think what it was is, between the explanation he gave and the explanation I'm thinking, it's just greed. They're looking at the difference of transaction fees, and they're like thinking they got this major deal on, buying Bitcoin Cash and trying to receive it to like a SegWit wallet or something like that. But yeah, it's kind of sad. Wow, that's weird. This website that this fucking this article that I've got on here must not be the New American. It says it's secure, but their shit keeps failing, and it took forever to get this thing to load right the first time. I don't know what the deal is there. It's probably like something when it parsed out the micro URL or something like that. It didn't work out right, or it wasn't the right thing, or whatever. Anyway, I got a few, I had a few articles on here. I still got a couple that are kind of book in length. And so that's one of the reasons I went a little long on the first music break is we're going to have some significant terrain to cover today. But like I was saying, with regard to my experience getting that money out to TP, Terrestrial Paper, I think that next time I will do it with a video camera on me or something, just to document the whole thing. I mean, like I said, I could have made at least 3 3-minute videos that would convey enough of the experience to people for them to understand, you know. Like the transaction when I did things in Bitcoin Cash, it was so much quicker than Bitcoin has been for a long time. I mean, it just seems to me like bigger blocks is the way to go. This whole fucking Lightning Network and SegWit this and fuck you, okay? You know, you wanna make up some sort of payment API for a business to use off chain. Okay, that's fine. Quit trying to add it as a fucking BIP to Bitcoin and making it the default means of operation for everybody, because the fact of the matter is that will cut out all of the fucking people that some in this space have been claiming to try and get into digital finance. You know, they categorize it as banking the unbanked. You've probably heard that a bazillion fucking times. You know what? I don't want a fucking bank account. Period. I don't want somebody else holding my fucking money. Period. I want to spend my money from my hand to the hand of the intended recipient. Just like I do with cash. And when I say that, I mean terrestrial paper. But that seems to be like too much for some to understand. And I don't know if it's just because they're trying to be salesmen for their perspective. And you know what? That's welcome. That's exactly what you're supposed to be doing here. Or if it is that they legitimately believe that handing their transactions off to a third-party arbiter is going to make things better. You know, your mesh network or whatever, as far as your experience of it goes, I've been reading the descriptions of it, and my understanding of it is that somebody will start the transaction, and then there will be a chain of little transactions after that will get credited for a big fucking whoop-de-doo. Okay? How is that going to be happening? What's the UI for that? Am I going to be doing the initiating transaction on the blockchain, or is somebody else going to have done that for me, and when I use my Bitcoin on their service, on their payment channel, I am only experiencing a modicum of friction because they're distributing the transaction fees, not just a transaction fee, fees, between me and everybody else that participates on this payment channel. You know, and there's like this illusion that this person that's doing this, they're going to be doing this as, you know, some just beneficent actor, that they're never going to abuse this position. Oh no. They're the last layer between, they're an introduced layer between you and the blockchain, But they're never going to abuse this position. No, never, ever, ever, ever. No, that people just don't work that way. You know, when they get a position that they can completely monopolize and extort people to go through, they never abuse that position. I mean, why would they ever do that? That's so silly. I mean, it's like people aren't thinking these fucking things through. Okay, they see the word hub and they think it's going to be some voluntary node out there that's just doing this for the fuck of it, like nodes used to be. Like nodes still are to some extent on the Bitcoin network, but they hear that word node and they think, oh, I can be a node. Oh, yeah, I could be a node. Not thinking about what the function of this node will be. It won't be doing transactions on chain. That means it will be part of a custodial framework. Again, like I said, I don't think people are thinking these things far enough through. In order for a payment channel to be even worth opening, I want to be doing thousands of fucking transactions on it. And if I'm doing thousands of transactions, that means I got to put a shit ton of Bitcoin on the first transaction. I don't have a shit ton of Bitcoin. I don't even think I have one Bitcoin. Point being that if I don't have it, I can't upfront the funding mechanism for it. You know, I can't sustain enough transactive activity for it to be worth it. You know, okay, so maybe if I put up like $2,000, how long is that going to stay up on the blockchain or whatever before it's sucked up? Probably not all that long. I mean, especially not with Bitcoin being like, what, I think last time I checked it was $17,000, $18,000 a Bitcoin. And give me a fucking break. It's not going to move shit. Anyway, I got this article here, and this one, it seems to me like the world is and when I say the world, I mean the newspaper reading, TV watching world is finally becoming aware of Bitcoin and digging deep enough to at least get some understanding of what's going on. And it seems to me like I'm seeing a lot of the first impressions of terrestrial reporters who've finally decided to pay attention to this space and communicate out to the average person, you know, more about this. And when I say that, I mean this is more couched in the sense of epiphany or awakening kind of thing, as opposed to, you know, this has been going on in the background this whole time. Oh, and now that you're paying attention, this is what it's about. Like, more like, oh, a significant number, like a really significant number of new people are finally paying attention to and being curious about this space. And, you know, if you want to consider that your mainstream moment or whatever, I think it being on Third Rock from the Sun or whatever the fuck that stupid ass show is. Oh, Big Bang Theory. That's right. Sorry, I don't really care for that show. I mean, it's all right, and it was okay for the first year or two, but I don't know. I don't think there's anybody on the show that Penny hasn't banged yet. So, and it seems to be like that's like a continuing thing. Everybody's got to bang Penny. Anyway, let's get into this article here. I got this one on the New American, and it's along this tone of awakening, you know, like these people were asleep this whole time. These people, you know, the people that are your readership haven't actually been aware of this shit yet, which I doubt. But continuing, let's go. And this is written by Alex Newman, so yes, penis. New American, Waking Up to a World Currency. And this is authored on Wednesday, 15th, 2010. Why didn't I check that before? It's kind of interesting though, but I'm going to go ahead and read this because it gives us a little bit of taste. I doubt they actually will even mention Bitcoin in this, but let's see what they had as far as an envision. The fact of the matter is, I think I was actually involved in Bitcoin by then, by September 15th, 2010. Interesting. Let's continue. If all the advocates of a world fiat currency, quote, a currency, or in parentheses rather, a currency not backed by a precious commodity like gold, were to scream at once, workers in world capitals, business centers, colleges, and news media may be deafened. And if global financial elites have their way, America will move quickly toward accepting a planetary fiat currency issued by a world central bank. Calls for a new global monetary regime are nothing new. After World War II left the world's financial system in disarray, political leaders and financial gurus met at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, from July 1st to the 22nd, 1944, to plan the post-war economic order. Economist John Maynard Keynes and British government proposed that the creation of a world currency called the Bancor. Oh my God, that's really interesting. And the U.S. government proposed a world currency to be known as Unitas. But for a lot of reasons, mostly American reluctance, the schemes never took off. Instead, the Bretton Woods Agreement resulted in the U.S. dollar, its value at the time tied to gold, being crowned the world reserve currency. But the dollar's place as the unchallenged world currency began being displaced with the dollar's decoupling from gold in 1971. A new system emerged. The dollar retained its position as the world's reserve currency, but now it was backed not by gold. I'm trying to make a minor adjustment here, make it a little easier for me to read. I'm fucking blind, by the way. But now it was not backed by gold, but only by the trust and the fact that oil and other commodities were traded around the world in dollars. Since then, the U.S. government has been growing itself and its power through creating money via the inflationary power of the Federal Reserve, thus making the dollar increasingly less stable, prompting vigorous calls for a world currency to stabilize world financial markets. That has especially been true as markets have imploded. Leading the charge. Naturally, prominent globalist leaders and central bankers have been at the forefront of promoting world currency schemes, and they are confident that the groundwork has been sufficiently laid to achieve the goal. President Dmitry Medvedev has been among the most vocal supporters. At the G8 meeting last year, he actually pulled a United Future World Currency coin out of his pocket, bearing the words, "Unity in Diversity." Then he explained to the audience that it means they're getting ready. I think it's a good sign that we understand how interdependent we are. In June of this year, he was at it again. We are making plans for the future. We are talking about creating other reserve currencies, and we are counting on other countries to understand this, Medvedev told an economic forum in St. Petersburg, Russia. At the same forum, French President Nicolas Sarkozy concurred, saying world powers, quote, should think together about a new international currency system at the upcoming G20 summit. He also said the world's financial system was, quote, outdated and should be replaced. Quote, We all need to think about the foundations for a new international financial system, he urged. We've been based on the Bretton Woods institutions of 1945, when our American friends were the only superpower. My question is, are we still in 1945? The answer here is no. Numerous other prominent national leaders have jumped on the international fiat currency bandwagon as well. Too many to list in a short article. But perhaps more importantly, powerful central bankers around the world are also pushing the issue. Former Fed boss and current chairman of Obama's Economic Recovery Advisory Board, Paul Volcker, for example, has long been a strong proponent of a global fiat currency and a global central bank. He is widely reported to have said, quote, "A global economy needs a global currency," and he has repeatedly called for such a system, hoping to see it emerge during his lifetime. Well, that's been achieved. In China, the People's Central Bank boss Zhao Xuan has also frequently called for a new reserve currency. In a 2009 report published on the central bank website entitled, quote, "Reform the International Monetary System," Xiaosheng explained, Xuan, my apologies, man, explained that, quote, "The desirable goal of reforming the international monetary system, therefore is to create the international reserve currency that is disconnected from individual nations and is able to remain stable in the long run, thus removing inherent deficiencies caused by using credit-based national currencies." When asked about the Communist Chinese regime's idea at the Council on Foreign Relations event, tax-dodging U.S. Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner, a regular proponent of global regulation, after acknowledging he had not yet read it, said, quote, We're actually quite open to that." The dollar immediately plunged, and while Geithner promptly backtracked on his statement, as the saying goes, the cat was already out of the bag. At a separate Council on Foreign Relations event earlier this year, European Central Bank boss Jean-Claude Trichet gave a speech entitled Global Governance Today. While different in important respects from calls to empower the International Monetary Fund as the world central bank, which seems to be the consensus view on how to quickly achieve a world currency, Trichet offered a vision that would ultimately lead to the same end. Quote, "We need a set of rules, institutions, informal groupings, and cooperation mechanisms that we call global governance," he said, praising the progress that has already been made in, quote, "strengthening the mandate of existing international institutions, but noting that, quote, no market can survive without a set of rules. This is particularly true at the international level." In terms of the international monetary system, he applauded the fact that central banks around the world were already, quote, "able to take quick, decisive, and coordinated action at a short notice." But the crisis also showed that gaps in the system of global governance in terms of both efficiency and legitimacy have to be filled. He explained, pointing out that the process was already ongoing. Overall, the system is moving decisively towards genuine global governance that is much more inclusive, Trichet said. The significant transformation of global governance that we are engineering today is illustrated by 3 examples. First, the emergence of the G20 as the prime group of global economic governance at the level of ministers, governors, and heads of state or government. Second, the establishment of the Global Economy Meeting of Central Bank Governors under the auspices of the Bank for International Settlements, BIS, as the prime group for the governance of central bank cooperation. And third, the extension of Financial Stability Board membership to include all of the systemic emerging market economies. In other words, the BIS, the Central Bank of Central Banks, which was almost disbanded for supporting the Nazis, is becoming increasingly powerful, along with global financial regulatory institutions. And for Trichet, this is a positive development. He added, global governance is of the essence to improve decisively the resilience of the global financial system, and concluded by saying, the crisis has driven a historic change in the framework of global governance. In my view, this transformation was overdue, and indeed, the economic crisis has given a major boost to advocates of a world financial and monetary regime. Global institutions. With the onset of the global financial crisis, which, interestingly enough, was largely brought on by an asset bubble caused via currency manipulation by the United States version of a central bank, the Federal Reserve, international authorities have become increasingly vocal about the supposed need for a world fiat currency controlled by a single world central bank. The United Nations and the International Monetary Fund are the most prominent among them. And both of these quasi-governmental institutions have recently issued reports blasting the dollar and calling for a world fiat currency. Quote, a new global reserve system could be created, one that no longer relies on the United States dollar as the single major reserve currency, said the UN's World Economic and Social Survey for 2010. Quote, the dollar has proved not to be a stable store of value, which is a requisite for a stable reserve currency. The new UN report said that the IMF should be given the authority to print its own fiat currency, claiming that the new system, quote, must not be based on a single currency or even multiple national currencies, but instead should permit the emission of international liquidity, such as special drawing rights, to create a more stable global financial system. SDRs are, quote, assets issued by the IMF with a value currently based on multiple national fiat currencies. They shouldn't be based on a single currency, or must not be based on a single currency or even multiple national currencies, but instead should permit the emission of international liquidity, such as special drawing rights, to create a more stable financial system. SDRs are, quote, assets issued by the IMF with a value currently based on multiple national fiat currencies. That's just fucking crazy. Late last year, another UN report from a different arm of the institution offered similar analysis and suggestions. Quote, in the discussion about necessary reforms of the international monetary and financial system, the problem of the United States dollar serving as the main international reserve asset has received renewed attention, said the report, published by the UN Conference on Trade and Development. The paper also pointed to SDRs as the potential international reserve currency. Earlier in 2009, another UN panel also called for talks on setting up a new international monetary system and moving away from the dollar. And the calls are only becoming more frequent and respected as time goes on. Then there is the International Monetary Fund, a likely candidate for the position of global central banker, which in some ways has already taken on the role. Like other figures within the organization, IMF boss Dominique Strauss-Kahn, an avowed socialist, has repeatedly called for global regulation and a world currency controlled by the, quote, fund. One day, the fund might even be called upon to provide a globally issued reserve asset, similar to, but in important respects different from, the SDR, he explained in a speech earlier this year, saying it would be, quote, intellectually healthy to explore the creation of a new IMF-backed world reserve currency before it is needed. A few months later, he told the high-level conference on the international monetary system that crisis is an opportunity and a new global currency issued by a global central bank with robust governance and institutional features could provide a nominal anchor and risk-free asset for the system. And it's not just Strauss-Kahn. In a barely noticed paper noticed in April of this year, the fund went even further than the UN or Strauss-Kahn. It outlined the future global fiat currency to be run by a transformed and newly empowered IMF. The paper, published by the IMF's Strategy, Policy, and Review Department and entitled, quote, Reserve Accumulation and International Monetary Stability, offers very specific proposals which, not surprisingly, would involve handing it massive powers over the global economy and, quote, making the special drawing right, SDR, the principal reserve asset in the international monetary system. And this is merely the short-term policy. The IMF wants to go further with the creation of a global currency called the Bancor. Wow. They've even created that already. And if you go on my... I don't know if it was them that created it, but if you go on my YouTube channel and look it up, there is a ICO called Bancor, and I did an episode called Bancor. It's tokens, 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 all the way down. I suggest you listen to it because it's quite interesting, and it makes me wonder if it is related to this whole business, because it does have potential in like 20 years to be the exact kind of tool that they're talking about. Continuing on. Of course, even if the IMF says its schemes will not likely come about quickly or easily, quote, it is understood that some of the ideas discussed are unlikely to materialize in the foreseeable future, absent a dramatic shift in appetite for international cooperation, it says in the report. Some analysts have suggested a war with Iran or a crash of China's economy could trigger such a shift, probably both. Trend towards monetary unions. Monetary unions, where a collection of national governments surrender their power over money to international institutions, are popping up around the world. In recent decades, there has been a declining number of currencies as more countries abandon their own currencies to use a multinational currency such as the euro. Africa already contains a patchwork of regional supranational currencies, including one in West Africa, another in Central Africa, and a group of countries that use the South African rand. A plan to introduce a continental currency, sometimes referred to as the Afro, controlled by the already existing African Union's African Central Bank, is set for completion in less than 2 decades. In Asia, calls for a regional and monetary union are growing stronger. Arabian nations, through the Gulf Cooperation Council, are planning their own common currency right now. In closer proximity to the United States, a group of Caribbean nations formed the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. All use the Eastern Caribbean dollar. More recently, a number of leftist Latin American regimes created the SUCRE, S-U-C-R-E, under the leadership of socialist despot Hugo Chavez. And a South American currency is currently in the works. Significant numbers of nations have also unilaterally abandoned their own currencies and switched to the dollar, such as Ecuador and El Salvador. In Europe, while not officially joining the Eurozone, numerous small countries have also switched to the euro. And this is exactly what many proponents of a global fiat currency are promoting as a means to that end. Once there are fewer currencies and the principle of supranational currency is established, such as has already occurred with the euro, it becomes easier to simply merge them. A 2017 article for the Council on Foreign Relations magazine Foreign Affairs, entitled "The End of National Currency," offered some insight into the strategy being pursued. Ben Steele, the Powerful Group's Director of International Economics, suggests a very specific proposal. Quote, "Governments should replace national currencies with the dollar or the euro, or, in the case of Asia, collaborate to produce a new multinational currency over a comparatively large and economic diversified area. Most of the world's smaller and poorer countries would clearly be best off unilaterally adopting the dollar or the euro, which would enable their safe and rapid integration into global financial markets. Latin American countries should dollarize. Eastern European countries and Turkey euroize." And that is precisely the argument of most prominent global currency enthusiasts. Columbia economics professor Robert Mundell, who could not be reached by press this time, is one of them. He is a Nobel Prize winner and a key advisor to the communist Chinese regime, and also known as the father of the euro. And he argues that the world should move toward a new global currency system called the DEY, D-E-Y, a basket of dollars, euros, and yen, controlled and issued by a global central bank, possibly a newly empowered IMF. Eventually, the architecture would lead to a truly global fiat currency. Quote, "My approach is rather to start out with arrangements for stabilizing exchange rates and move from there to a global currency. It would start off from the situation as it is at present and gradually move it toward the desired solution. We could start off with the three big currencies in the world, the dollar, the euro, and the yen, and with specified weights make a basket of them into a unit that could be called the DEY," Mundell explained in a 2005 speech called "The Case for a World Currency." The DEY could then become the platform on which to build global currency, which I shall call the INTOR. Yeah. Fortunately, it's not up to him who values things. Continuing on, his basic plan for the world currency would be implemented in 3 steps, he said. First, stabilization of exchange rates. Next, a monetary union under the DEY consisting of most of the world's economy. And finally, the creation of INTOR. While Mundell acknowledged that it might be difficult, he expressed optimism about the currency's prospects, saying, "The next big crisis might be the occasion for a reconvening of a Bretton Woods-type conference to establish the conditions for a new international monetary system, With the United States looking at a likely second round of economic turmoil and its dollar becoming increasingly unstable as interest payments on the national debt take up an ever larger part of all taxes collected, such a, quote, crisis is probably closer than Americans would like to imagine. Other prominent advocates agree with the Mundell strategy for achieving a world currency managed by a global central bank. We'll probably get there by the merger of monetary unions, explained Morrison Bonpass, founder and president of the Single Global Currency Association and author of the Single Global Currency, Common Sense for the World, and spelled CENTS, for the world. In an interview with The New American, quote, "But there are several possible routes. One is to continue the current regionalization of currencies to include North America and creation, expansion, and merger of monetary unions, and then combine those currencies into one. Another is for smaller countries to continue to "ize" their nations, legal tender as in dollarize and euroize. Once the tipping point is reached where one currency supports approximately 40 to 50% of the world's GDP, the movement will accelerate and anoint that currency as the single global currency. The organization's target date, 2024. Clearly, the move towards regional currencies is picking up traction, especially during this decade. Already emerging. Some argue that the global central bank and all that it entails are already taking solid form, or worse, already here. Quote, "What the IMF is doing, they've positioned themselves and are actually beginning the process of issuing debt for the first time," explained James Rickards, Senior Managing Director for Market Intelligence and co-head of Threat Finance and Market Intelligence at Omnis, a leading consulting firm. Quote, "So what that means is the IMF is acting like a central bank because it's leveraging its balance sheet," he told The New American, saying SDRs could replace the dollar and become the international reserve currency in 2 to 5 years. And it's already going on. In terms of paper currency, a leveraged balance sheet, and the creation of liquidity out of thin air, the IMF is clearly the way they're going because, as I've said, they've already done it. It's not speculation, it's already happening, he said, noting that the shift away from dollars has already started and would accelerate. The IMF has indeed taken some extraordinary steps recently. Last year, for example, for the first time in the fund's history, it issued bonds denominated in SDRs. The Chinese regime promptly gobbled up $50 billion worth, with the IMF saying in a statement that the sale offers China a safe investment instrument, and that it was part of a broader plan to, quote, "boost the fund's capacity to help its membership, particularly the developing and emerging market countries, weather the global financial crisis and facilitate an early recovery of the global economy." And of course, there's still more. The other thing the IMF has done, and not for the first time really, for the second time, but for the first time in quite a large size, is to issue SDRs, explained Rickards. The IMF is issuing its own paper currency, and, like all fiat currency, it's backed by nothing. Rickards said, quote, "I view all these as pilot programs. In other words, they're kind of testing the plumbing. Now the IMF is positioned to, in effect, and I think this is the plan, to become a global central bank, which can issue its own currency called SDRs, leverage its balance sheet through borrowing, and then create assets by making loans and investing in securities, all under the auspices of the IMF Executive Committee, which is basically the same set of people as the G20. At recent G20 confabs, the centralization of the world's monetary system has indeed been a hot topic. Headlines around the world announced boldly and with good cause, the imminent arrival of a new world order, a global currency, a world central bank, and a planetary monetary regime. The early 2009 G20 declaration, for example, said, quote, "We have agreed to support a general SDR allocation which will inject $250 billion into the world economy and increase global liquidity." In simpler terms, printing international fiat money. Now the regulatory regime is going global too, and fast. The same G20 meeting also led the Financial Stability Forum being transformed into the Financial Stability Board, usurping financial regulatory authority traditionally held up by national central banks around the world. The new board is rapidly becoming a global financial regulator as its mandate expands to include overseeing action to address vulnerabilities in the financial system, setting guidelines, and even managing contingency planning for cross-border crisis management. Media support. No strategy for dramatic unpopular change would be complete without a public media campaign. So, of course, among the prominent voices throwing their weight behind a global fiat currency and a global central bank are some of the most influential media outlets in the world. Already in 1988, The Economist wrote an article predicting a global currency within 30 years, saying, quote, "This means a big loss of economic sovereignty, but the trends that make the new hypothetical global currency so appealing are taking that sovereignty away in any case." A decade later, the New York Times took up the issue with a piece from prominent CFR insider and global central bank promoter Jeffrey Garten, calling for a global Fed. After praising the development of various unconstitutional institutions in the United States, most notably the Federal Reserve, Garten wrote, "The world needs an institution that has a hand on the economic rudder when the seas become stormy. It needs a global central bank." 10 years after that, Garten penned a piece for the Financial Times, once again advocating, quote, "the establishment of a global monetary authority." In a 2008 Newsweek article entitled "We Need a Bank of the World," Garten claimed, quote, "The financial crisis is global, and only an international central bank can deal with it." The piece called for world leaders to begin laying the groundwork for establishing a global central bank because, quote, "the Fed no longer has the capability to lead single-handedly." The year after that article, Garten was at it again, this time at Business Week. If critics could suspend the hyperventilating for a few minutes, they'd realize a global central bank is becoming a necessity in today's complex, interconnected world economy, he wrote. The piece also cites Tim TurboTax Geithner, who said, quote, "We need a common global solution to these markets, not separate regional solutions." Meanwhile, the Washington Post ran a 2009 story praising the International Monetary Fund's transformation into a Bank of the World. Bowing to a new economic world order, the IMF would grant fresh powers to the likes of China, India, and Brazil. It would have vastly expanded authority to act as a global banker to governments rich and poor, wrote the Post's staff writer Anthony Faiola. And with more flexibility to effectively print its own money, it would have the ability to inject liquidity into global markets in a way once limited to major central banks. The article also mentioned the IMF's transformation into a veritable United Nations for the global economy and quoted various experts praising the developments. Even the supposedly more free market-friendly press in the United States has also backed the scheme. Quote, "World money with a world central bank seems a next logical step," wrote Wall Street Journal editor emeritus Robert Bartley in a 2003 opinion piece for the newspaper. Quote, "A world money would be an extraordinary boon to international stability." He was writing from Mendel's Monetary Conference at his castle in Italy. The world elite is on a mission. Its plan is to impose a global fiat monetary regime on humanity is well underway. And if serious resistance is not mounted soon, the New World Monetary Order could be just around the corner. And there we are. There we have it. And so, it's this kind of stuff that makes people think that Bitcoin has something to do with this. And I can tell you from my own experience that it's not true. Bitcoin started in the basements and closets and in garages of American college kids and 20-something and 30-something radical idealists. It wasn't started up by the IMF. Sorry, it's the truth. And I mean, even if it were started by the IMF, they've already lost control of it. I mean, that's pretty much clear, seeing as we do so much of the mining and we can see so much of what's going on out there. But yeah, this is the kind of article that somebody would read and reflect on Bitcoin, or might see on a Reddit post in association with Bitcoin and think to themselves, oh shit, Bitcoin is the IMF's tool, and yeah, whatever. Bunch of bullshit. And there's a few things in this article that should indicate to you that thesis is in fact bullshit. And I can point to one thing right off the bat, is altcoins. Altcoins would not exist if Bitcoin were part of the whole idea, And individual altcoin networks would not exist if the IMF were the standard, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I think this is all bogus. I mean, I think at the time, of 2010, you gotta remember, an author for the New American probably hadn't even heard of Bitcoin in 2010. So that's one thing. But another thing is that we haven't followed a development path, I think, that would be one that's indicative of an overriding authority pushing us. I think even now with the pushes from Blockstream to get us all into SegWit and off-chain and all that bullshit, I think that's being understood for what it actually is by a greater and greater segment of the community every day. And I think that's kind of reflected in the slowdown, I should say, of the meteoric rise in price of Bitcoin. I mean, if we'd have kept going according to the trend we were on a week ago, we would be up in 30,000, 40,000. A lot of people were actually predicting that, 30 or 40,000. And so, it's those type of things that make the hard 90-degree angle turns, where Bitcoin goes from an uptrend to a quick downtrend. It makes it that much less credible to a lot of investors when they're looking at it, because they're like, oh, dude, this thing was supposed to just go through the roof. You know, you just throw money at it and it goes through the roof, right? Well, you know, you're taking money that you would have been buying Bitcoin and you're throwing it at somebody who's got it in a bank account, and it's all denominated in US dollars. You're not actually adding to the demand side of Bitcoin by buying derivatives. Do you understand? That's part of it. But I think more of it has to do with the interest rate. That's something that I don't hear anybody else in Bitcoin talking about. And if you go back in time and you start just pre-Gox, like I would say 2012 through 2014, and you go back and you find the big spikes on the chart, if you were to go and Google those dates in association with the Federal Reserve, you would probably be finding articles concerning their announcement of additional QE for every single one of the spikes. And I especially like the Mt. Gox spike, because that one in particular, I think they had announced maybe like 2 or 3 days before that they were pretty much going to go QE forever. And it's fucking thing shot through the roof. I mean, there are a lot of other factors, but I think a lot of that was people just going, oh shit, this game is actually what they say it is. It's time to move some monetary value out so I get to keep it, instead of watching it get sucked out from under me. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw down into some music. I'm kind of drifting a little bit. Need to recaffeinate. And, I haven't played this song in 2 forevers, and so I think it's time. This one is off of Beg to Differ by Prong. Beg to Differ. Here on Coin Metal. And that was Meshuggah with a little bit of Swarm. So yeah, it's really interesting taking a look back and seeing what somebody's idea of what a global currency would look like. And to me, it's amazing that such a thing was created without the IMF. You know, that we are transacting in something similar, but it's not an SDR. And you've got to wonder how that dynamic alone will change the growing world economy. The dependencies are a lot different between an IMF established system, I would think anyway. I mean, both are electronics, so I would imagine the footprint would be slightly larger because, of course, the organization being represented here would be international in scope. So I would expect them to have a necessity for, say, a higher physical presence than the mining equipment in your house. But I could be wrong. I mean, it would be kind of like the ultimate mindfuck to get you to mine the IMF SDR system. I think that some people actually have that in mind for the Bitcoin blockchain, I think. That they want to have their own little side chain, their own little payment network or whatever, that they'll bind a volume to the Bitcoin blockchain that they draw from, but that the underlying unit won't be a Bitcoin. Because you can do that whole you can do that. You can store other currencies on other blockchains. And so if you had a mutual format, say, for a certain document or some such, that you could ingrain that into the blockchain. And I heard this discussion about blockchain cruft and volume and whatnot, and I say that it is worth what people are willing to pay for it, as far as like the block space is concerned. And I don't think that trying to limit what people put on it is actually a good idea. Now, let me explain what I mean there. Sure, people will put pictures of their cats up there. And they will put stupid cat videos on the blockchain. Who gives a fuck? The fact of the matter is that the blockchain, in that sense, could almost be operating as a historical log. And so, like, back in, a century from now, we could actually look back and have a true account of what happened, and not an edited, not a modified, not a trunicated, not a flavored, not a slanted or biased history, but a true account of history. Consider the value of that alone. And now some people would look at that and say, that's some Orwellian, overlord bullshit. It all depends on what you use it for. Are you using it to try to enhance life for all life on planet Earth and make a profit in doing so? Because you know what? I believe that's possible. I know. Sounds completely fucking antithetical to everything you've ever heard. But see, I believe it's possible. I believe that the only reason that isn't the current paradigm of things, is that the people that loan the money, the people that fund projects, they aren't necessarily motivated in that way. Maybe they haven't been around enough nature in their life or something. I don't know. But if people that are dedicated recyclers got their solar panels on the roof of their house, have crafted some other means of yielding energy either through biomass or through wind or hydro or whatever, that electricity could be dedicated to their own uses and whatnot. And I completely forgot where I was going with that. Sorry, just completely got derailed there. This wonderful song going on in the background. It always gets me. Fucking Static X. Anyway, I think that the greater world economy that I see ahead of us, it doesn't have the value systems that have bombs in mind. The people that I interact with that are interested in cryptocurrencies and already are involved in cryptocurrencies, they are the people that separate all their stuff out in recycling. They are the people that are trying to find ways to harness electricity. And when it comes to 5-10 years down the line, considering my thesis of that the primary driver of the growth of Bitcoin's price isn't just interest, be it institutional or newbie, but in fact fiat inflation. Consider where we'll be in another 5 or 10 years, and the hodlers that are walking around now in their Birkenstocks and their hemp clothing, and they ride their bike to their day job or whatever. Consider what their wealth will be in 5 or 10 years if they just kept hodling. And now consider the differences in the things that they might be willing to loan money for, fund, as opposed to those that are currently running things. And now consider how that might affect the way your life works. See, that's the kind of thinking I do. Okay, when when I'm thinking about Bitcoin and whatnot, I'm thinking about small cottage communities instead of cities as they currently exist. And yeah, I think we occupy too much area with quote-unquote cities and city growth. That's my impression of it. That's my feeling about it. I could be wrong. But I think one of the things that contributes to the mental health of somebody is exposure to other organisms. I know it's completely fucking woo-woo to some people and whatnot, but my health has greatly improved since I've gotten away from people. And I think there's more than enough space for us to get a little bit of elbow room on this planet. And, you know, I'm not talking about like a little 1 acre square and 1 acre square and we're all in like hypercubes stacked on top of one another in 1 acre. But I mean that we do have enough space on this planet, both ocean and land, where we could be pretty well separated from one another. And the types of communications networks that we have these days would probably be enhanced if our populations were more evenly distributed across the planet. So it's those kind of things that we got to keep in mind as far as future development goes. You know, like I said, the visions that I have of the future, they have smaller economies that are linked globally. And we're all buying and selling one another's things and working on making our things. And the kinds of values, again, that I see being most expressed aren't ones of, you know, machinery and you know, high technological buildings and really dense clusters of people being carted around on fucking buses and trains and shit. I see independent travel. I see independent flight, both within the atmosphere and out into space. That's the fucking future I want to live in. I want to say, gosh, you know, do I want to fish on Earth or Mars today? That's the kind of decisions that I want to be making in the future. Get to work. Make that shit happen. Anyway, I got this latest statement by the CFTC, and I think we might have enough time to devour it. The font on it is relatively large, and you know me, I'll try and game it up a bit. But I was reading some of the tweets associated with it, and that's kind of what drove me to even bother with it. But let's see what the future may hold as far as the Commodities Futures Trading Commission may in fact be. And this is 17 CFR Part 1, RIN, I guess that's some sort of ID number, 3038-AE62, retail commodity transactions involving virtual currency. Ooh, tasty! Summary. Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the Commission, or CFTC, is issuing this proposed interpretation of the term, quote, actual delivery, as set forth in certain provision of the Commodity Exchange Act, CEA, pursuant to the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, the Dodd-Frank Act. Specifically, this proposed interpretation is being issued to inform the public of the Commission's views as to the meaning of actual delivery within the specific context of retail commodity transactions in virtual currency. The Commission requests comment on this proposed interpretation and further invites comment on specific questions related to the Commission's treatment of virtual currency transactions. Cool, they're open to debate. Dates. And hey, by the way, just to let you guys know, the CFTC does have a Twitter account. And you know, now that we have so many characters, you can listen to this, reflect on what you would like to say, be concise, be nice. Those people at the CFTC are trying to work with us, at least some of them are, I think. And let them know what you think. Anyway, so let's continue here. Comment on this proposed interpretation that further invites and comment virtual currency transactions. Dates. Comments must be received on or before insert 90 days after date of publication in the Federal Register. I don't know if this has been yet. Addresses. You may submit comments identified RIN 3038 AE-AE62 by any of the following methods. The CFTC website, and that is http://comments.cftc.gov. Follow the instructions for submitting comments through the comments online process on the website. Mail. Christopher Kirkpatrick, Secretary of the Commission Commodity Trading Futures Commission. Commodity Futures Trading Commission. I don't know why I keep fucking that up. 3 Lafayette Center, 1155 21st Street, Northwest, Washington, D.C. 20581. Hand delivery, courier, same as mail above. Federal e-rulemaking portal, http://www.regulations.gov. Follow the instructions for submitting comments. Please submit your comments using only one method. Damn it, they didn't even include their Twitter account. Dude, if you have a fucking Twitter account, I'm going to be hitting you up on your Twitter account. That's what it's there for. Anyway, continuing. All comments must be submitted in English, or if not, accompanied by an English translation. Comments will be posted as received to cftc.gov. You should submit only information that you wish to make available publicly. If you wish the Commission to consider information that you believe is exempt from disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act, a petition for confidential treatment of the exempt information may be submitted according to the procedures established in Commission Regulation 145.9 to the second power, it looks like. So it's actually second reference, my apologies. The Commission reserves the right, but shall have no obligation to review, pre-screen, filter, redact, refuse, or remove any or all of your submission information, your submission from cftc.gov that it may deem to be inappropriate for publication, such as obscene language. So watch it. Watch your French. All submissions that have been redacted or removed that contain comments on the merits of the interpretation will be retained in the public comment file and will be considered as required under the Administrative Procedure Act and other applicable laws, and may be accessible under FOIA. For further information, contact Philip W. Riamondi, Special Counsel. Oh, they got a phone number and an email. 202-418-5717. Priamondi at cftc.gov, or David P. Van Wagner, Chief Counsel, 202-418-5481. D. Van Wagner at cftc.gov, Office of General Counsel, Division of Market Oversight, Commodity Futures Trading Commission, 1155 21st Street, Northwest Washington, D.C. 20581. Supplementary information. Background. With certain exemptions, the CFTC has been granted exclusive jurisdiction over commodity futures, options, and all other derivatives that fall within the definition of a swap. Further, the Commission has been granted general anti-fraud and anti-manipulation authority over, quote, any swap or contract of sale of any commodity in interstate commerce or for future delivery on or subject to the rules of any registered entity. The Commission's mission is to foster open, transparent, competitive, and financially sound markets, and protect the American public from fraudulent schemes and abusive practices in those markets and products over which it has been granted jurisdiction. Not mine. Pursuant to CEA Section 2C2D, the marketplace for, quote, retail commodity transactions is one such area over which the Commission has been granted explicit oversight authority. CEA Section 2C2D applies to any agreement, contract, or transaction in any commodity that is entered into with or offered to, even if not entered into with, a person that is neither an eligible contract participant nor an eligible commercial entity, quote, retail, on a leveraged or margin basis, or financed by the offeror, the counterparty, or a person acting in concert with the offeror or counterparty on a similar basis. CEA Section 2C2D further provides that such an agreement, contract, or transaction is subject to CEA Sections 4A, 4B, and 4B as if the agreement, contract, or transaction was a contract of sale of a commodity for future delivery. The statute, however, exempts certain transactions from its application. In particular, CEA Section 2C2D13AA accepts a contract of sale that, quote, results in actual delivery within 28 days or such other longer period as the Commission may determine by rule or regulation based on the typical commercial practice in cash or spot markets for the commodity involved. If no exemption is applicable, these retail transactions are commodity interests, subject to Commission regulations together with futures, options, and swaps. Under this authority, the Commission regulates retail commodity transactions with the exemption of contracts of sale that result in actual delivery within 28 days. The Dodd-Frank Act added CEA Section 2C2D to address certain judicial uncertainty involving the Commission's regulatory oversight capabilities. The Commission has long held that certain speculative commodity transactions involving leverage or margin may have an indicia of futures contracts, subjecting them to Commission oversight. And hold on one second here, I gotta make an adjustment. However, judicial decisions emerged that called into question the Commission's oversight over certain leveraged retail transactions in currencies and other commodities. In 2008, Congress addressed this judicial uncertainty by providing the Commission with more explicit authority over retail foreign currency transactions in CEA Section 2C2C. These new statutory provisions established a 2-day actual delivery exemption for such transactions. 2 years later, Congress provided the Commission with explicit oversight authority over all, quote, retail commodity transactions in CEA Section 2C2D. As noted, these new statutory provisions established an exemption for instances when actual delivery of the commodity occurs within 28 days. In connection with its retail commodity transaction oversight, the Commission previously issued a proposed interpretation of the term, quote, actual delivery in the context of CEA Section 2C2D, accompanied by a request for comment. In that interpretation, the Commission provided several examples of what may and may not satisfy the actual delivery exemption. After reviewing public comments, the Commission issued a final interpretation in 2013, the 2013 guidance. The 2013 guidance explained that the Commission will consider evidence, quote, beyond the four corners of contract documents to assess whether actual delivery of the commodity occurred. The Commission further noted that it will, quote, employ a functional approach and examine how the agreement, contract, or transaction is marketed, managed, and performed instead of relying solely on language used by the parties in the agreement, contract, or transaction. Meaning they will take the model that you have and evaluate it against their currently existing models to see if any of their currently existing regulation fits your framework. The 2013 guidance also included a list of relevant factors the Commission will consider in an actual delivery determination, and again provided examples of what may and may not constitute actual delivery. As per the 2013 guidance, the only satisfactory examples of actual delivery involve transfer of title and possession of the commodity to the purchaser or a depository acting on the purchaser's behalf, i.e., a Lightning Node payment node. A Lightning Network payment node. You know, one of those things that you guys think you're going to be? Yeah, that's it. Among other things, mere book entries and certain instances where a purchase is, quote, rolled, offset, or otherwise netted with another transaction do not constitute actual delivery. Well, I might be wrong on that one, but I don't think so. Within a year after the 2013 guidance was released, the 11th Circuit issued an opinion affirming a preliminary injunction obtained by the Commission in CFTC v. Hunter Wise Commodities, LLC. Hunter Wise further reinforced the Commission's interpretation of actual delivery in the 2013 guidance. Specifically, the 11th Circuit recognized that delivery, quote, denotes a transfer of possession and control. Indeed, quote, if actual delivery means anything, it means something other than simple, quote, delivery. For we must attach meaning to Congress's use of the modifier, quote, actual. Accordingly, the court stated that actual delivery denotes the act of giving real and immediate possession to the buyer or the buyer's agent, and constructive delivery does not suffice. Notably, the 11th Circuit found that its own holding harmonized with the 2013 guidance and recognized that the legislative history behind the CEA Section 2C2D also complements its decision. Soon after Hunter Wise's decision, the Commission established that virtual currency is a commodity. Yeah, we already read that. Is a commodity as that term defined by CEA Section 1A9. Subsequently, the Commission brought its first enforcement action against a platform that offered virtual currency transactions to retail customers on a leveraged, margined, or financed basis without registering with the Commission. And here you go. There you go. Leveraged, margined, or financed. What do you got to do to open up a payment channel? You got to finance it. Continuing on. In the Bitfinex settlement order, the Commission found that the virtual currency platform violated CEA Sections 4A and 4D because the unregistered entity, quote, did not actually deliver Bitcoins purchased from them as prescribed within the actual delivery exemption. Rather, the entity, quote, held the purchased Bitcoins in Bitcoin deposit wallets that it owned and controlled. After Bitfinex, the Commission received requests for guidance with regard to the meaning of the actual delivery exemption in the specified context of virtual currency transactions. Accordingly, the Commission has decided to issue this proposed interpretation to seek public comment. The Commission is issuing this proposed interpretation to inform the public of the Commission's views as to the meaning of the term actual delivery in the context of virtual currency and to provide the public with guidance how the Commission intends to assess whether any given retail commodity transaction in virtual currency, whereby an entity or platform offers margin trading or otherwise facilitates the use of margin, leverage, or financing arrangements for their retail market participants, results in actual delivery as the term is used in CEA Section 2C, 2D, 2, 3, and you know, I don't know how to say that. That's two lowercase i's. I'm assuming that's a 2 because it's demarked as a 2 on the. It's like bullet point 2 or something like that. Section 3, AA. Or subsection 3, AA. The Commission requests comment generally on this proposed interpretation and further invites comments on specific questions as outlined within this release. So, they're asking for your guidance on that shit. So read up on what they're talking about. They've got plenty of citations there. Let them know how you feel about it. You got 90 days after this fucking release. You got until February 15th, 2018. But hurry the fuck up. Anyway, continuing on. Section 2. Commission interpretation of actual delivery for virtual currencies. This is very important to us, I'm sure. A. Virtual currency as a commodity. As noted previously, the Commission considers virtual currency to be a commodity. Like many other intangible commodities that the Commission has recognized over the course of its existence, ergo, renewable energy credits, emission allowances, certain indices, and certain debt instruments, among others. Indeed, since their inception, virtual currency structures were proposed as digital alternatives to gold and other precious metals. As a commodity, virtual currency is subject to applicable provisions of the CEA and Commission regulations. The Commission interprets the term virtual currency broadly, of course it does. In the context of this interpretation, virtual or digital currency encompasses any digital representation of value, a digital asset, that functions as a medium of exchange, and any other digital unit of account that is used as a form of currency, i.e., transferred from one party to another as a medium of exchange, may be manifested through units, tokens, or coins, among other things, and may be distributed by way of digital smart contracts, among other structures. However, the Commission notes that it does not intend to create a bright-line definition at this time, given the evolving nature of the commodity and, in some instances, its underlying public distributed ledger technology, DLT, or blockchain. B. The Commission's interest in virtual currency. The Commission recognizes that certain virtual currencies and their underlying blockchain technologies had the potential to yield notable advancements in applications of financial technology, fintech. Let me get a sip of water here, hold on. Good water. Always hydrate. Indeed, as part of its efforts to facilitate beneficial fintech innovation and help ensure market integrity, the Commission launched the Lab CFTC initiative. This initiative provides the Commission with a platform to engage the fintech community and promote market-enhancing innovation in furtherance of improving the quality, resiliency, and competitiveness of the markets overseen by the Commission. As such, the Commission is closely following the development and continuing evolution of blockchain technologies and virtual currencies. Moreover, since virtual currency can serve as an underlying component of derivative transactions, the Commission maintains a close interest in the development of the virtual currency marketplace generally. As a practical matter, virtual currency, by virtue of its name, represents a digital medium of exchange for goods and services similar to fiat currency. Over time, numerous centralized platforms have emerged as markets to convert virtual currency into fiat currency or other virtual currencies. These platforms provide a place to immediately exchange one commodity for another on the spot. Some of these centralized platforms also attempt to cater to those that wish to speculate on the price movements of a virtual currency against other currencies. For example, a speculator may purchase virtual currency using borrowed money in the hopes of covering any outstanding balance owed through profits from favorable price movements in the future. This interpretation is specifically focused on such, quote, retail commodity transactions, whereby an entity or platform, bullet point 1, offers margin trading or otherwise facilitates the use of margin, leverage, or financing arrangements for their retail market participants, bullet point 2. Typically to enable such participants to speculate or capitalize on price movements of the commodity, two hallmarks of a regulated futures marketplace. Beyond their practical and speculative functions, the emergence of these nascent markets has also been negatively marked by a variety of retail customer harm that warrants the Commission's attention, including, among other things, flash crashes and other market disruptions, delayed settlements, alleged spoofing, hacks, alleged internal theft, alleged manipulation, smart contract coding vulnerabilities, bucket shop arrangements, and other conflicts of interests. These types of activities, perpetuated by bad actors, can inhibit market-enhancing innovation, undermine market integrity, and stunt further market development. I'm just going to take a moment here, CFTC, and say this is the wrong call. What these instances have taught us have been the hallmarks of the ways that our trust can be abused through the presentation materials and the stated function of various crypto projects. Your regulation of these markets would have given them certain envelopes of time, certain umbrellas with which to continue their market manipulation or abuse, and we would have been completely helpless to help ourselves. You know, and that's, if you're trying to reduce harm to the overall market, let the scammers scam. You know, we'll figure out who the fuck they are. They can only burn us so many fucking times before we're looking at their presentation materials for specific identification markers, you know, of either the project, the way that it's stated to operate, or the individuals involved. You know, these are the ways that you would be advising us as far as when you evaluate a company and determine whether or not it's fit to be traded publicly. We figure out these things in real time. And while that may hurt some people, it spares the greater percentage of us that would continue to be hurt if the CFTC or the FDIC or the SEC were to start giving these people stamps of approval. And you have seen this. You have seen this over and over and over again within the last 3 decades alone. Shit, you're still seeing it. If you looked up on Google, like financial calamity, financial crisis, scam, something like that, you would find it throughout your regulated markets, and often by the most trusted individuals in those markets. So you really have to start asking yourself, are we really helping the public by playing mommy and daddy when we can't actually achieve our mandate? When our mandate is always resulting in us back looking and fining these people a disproportionately small amount of their ill-gotten boodle. You are not doing us favors by trying to regulate this shit. You are hurting us. We're starting to see institutionals looking at us and saying, look, we can sneer all we want, but this is year 8 of this fucking project that these kids started, and it's international, and it's not. It doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon, and it's looking really, really profitable right now. So we should probably get in on it. This is not the time to come in and say, oh, hey, we've been regulating markets for decades, and we know how everything is supposed to work, and so just do it according to the good old ways that we've got here written in stone that we've been using for the last 3 centuries to base all our ideology on, and everything will be fine. Take a look around you, man. Take a real good fucking look around you. We've got to disrupt the economies of foreign nations and disrupt their entire governmental structure so that we can allow oil to get onto the market in black and gray markets to keep the oil cheap enough for us to continue to burn. And I'm sorry, the 80s should have been a real big fucking clarion call to everybody involved in oil. This day will come again. And no amount of exploration or drilling is going to get you the fuck out of it. No amount of war and seizure of other people's oil is going to get you out of it. You are going to face it again. And now that we are seeing the world economy starting to decouple from the petrodollar and that whole idea, we're going to need another mutual common to be basing the world economy on, or at least being able to interact with the rest of the world economy. Because I think that we're going into a phase of greater independence with regard to energy. And so this idea that you can maintain a global structure based on oil and coal and nuclear power and all that shit, that's going away. Anyway, let's continue on. These types of activities perpetrated by bad actors can inhibit market-enhancing innovation, undermine market integrity, and stunt further market development. No. They show us where the fuck-ups are and let us learn from them so we can move forward. Continuing on. C. Actual delivery of virtual currencies. As underscored by its efforts to engage the fintech community, the Commission emphasizes that it does not intend to impede market-enhancing innovation or otherwise harm the evolving virtual currency marketplace with this interpretation. Unfortunately, you will. To the contrary, the Commission believes this interpretation can help advance a healthy ecosystem and support further market-enhancing innovation. Additionally, the Commission takes seriously the goal of protecting U.S. retail market participants engaged in the virtual currency marketplace that falls within the Commission's jurisdiction, as it would with respect to retail market participants trading in any other virtual commodity marketplace that falls within its jurisdiction. The Commission drafted this interpretation with such a balance in mind. As discussed above, a retail commodity transaction may be accepted from CEA Section 2C, 2D, and thus not subject to CEA Sections 4A, 4B, and 4B. Oh no, I'm sorry. 4 subsection A, 4 subsection B, and 4B. If actual delivery of commodity occurs within 28 days of the transaction. The long-standing Model State Commodity Code also contains an exemption from its commodity contract regulation when physical settlement occurs within 28 days. However, the Model State Commodity Code provides for the ability to lengthen or shorten its 28-day physical delivery exemption time period, while CEA Section 2 subsection C2, subsection C, subsection 2, subsection D, only provides the Commission with the ability to lengthen its actual delivery exemption time period. I don't think that's true. They'll probably find an exemption to shorten it as well. Therefore, absent congressional action, there's your exemption, the Commission is unable to reduce the actual delivery exemption period for speculative leverage-based retail commodity transactions in virtual currency. The one-size-fits-all 28-day delivery period in CEA Section 2CD and 2C, 2D may not properly account for innovation or customary practice in certain cash markets, such as virtual currency transactions, that would presumably take much less than 28 days to deliver to a purchaser in a typical spot transaction. Without the application of CEA Section 2C, 2D, retail market participants that transact on platforms offering speculative transactions in virtual currency involving margin, leverage, or other financing will not be afforded many of the protections that flow from registration under the CEA. Despite statutory limitations, the Commission will utilize its current statutory authority as best it can to prevent fraud in retail commodity transactions involving virtual currency. My apologies. The Commission, in interpreting the term actual delivery for the purposes of CEA Section 2C, 2D, 23AA, will continue to follow the 2013 guidance and, quote, employ a functional approach and examine how the agreement, contract, or transaction is marketed, managed, and performed instead of relying solely on language used by the parties in the agreement, contract, or transaction. Further, the Commission will continue to assess all relevant factors to aid in such an actual delivery determination, more specifically, the Commission's view of when actual delivery has occurred within the context of virtual currency requires, number one, a customer having the ability to 1. Take possession or control of the entire quantity of the commodity, whether it was purchased on margin or using leverage or any other financing arrangement, and 2. Use it freely in commerce, both within and away from any particular platform, no later than 28 days from the date of the transaction, and number 2, the offeror and counterparty seller, including any of their respective affiliates or other persons acting in concert with the offeror or counterparty seller on a similar basis, not retaining any interest in or control over any of the commodity purchased on margin, leverage, or other financing arrangement within the expiration of 28 days from the date of the transaction. Consistent with the 2013 guidance, a sham delivery does not constitute actual delivery for purposes of this interpretation. The offeror or counterparty seller, including their agents, must retain no interest or control whatsoever in the virtual currency acquired by the purchaser at the expiration of 28 days from the date of entering into the transaction. Indeed, in its simplest form, actual delivery of virtual currency connotes the ability of the purchaser to utilize the virtual currency purchased on the spot to immediately purchase goods or services with the currency elsewhere. Think about that one. In the context of an actual delivery determination in virtual currency, physical settlement of the commodity must occur. A cash settlement or offset mechanism, as described in example 4 below, will not satisfy the actual delivery exception of CEA section 2C2D. And let's see if there is an actual... Oh, I guess it's somewhere below. The distinction between physical settlement and cash settlement in this context is akin to the settlement of a spot foreign currency transaction at a commercial bank or hotel in a foreign nation. The customer receives physical foreign currency, not US dollars. As mentioned, such physical settlement must occur within 28 days from the date on which the agreement, contract, or transaction is entered into to constitute actual delivery. Consistent with the interpretation above, the Commission provides the following non-exclusive examples to further clarify the meaning of actual delivery in the virtual currency context. Example 1. Actual delivery of virtual currency will have occurred if within 28 days of entering into an agreement, contract, or transaction, there is a record on the relevant public distributed ledger network or blockchain of the transfer of virtual currency, whereby the entire quantity of the purchased virtual currency, including any portion of the purchase made using leverage, margin, or other financing, is transferred from the counterparty seller's blockchain wallet to the purchaser's blockchain wallet. The counterparty seller retains no interest in or control over the transferred commodity, and the counterparty seller has transferred title of the commodity to the purchaser. When a matching platform or other third-party offeror acts as an intermediary, the virtual currency's public distributed ledger must reflect the purchased virtual currency transferring from the counterparty seller's blockchain wallet to the third-party offeror's blockchain wallet, and separately from the third-party offeror's blockchain wallet to the purchaser's blockchain wallet, provided the purchaser's wallet is not affiliated with or controlled by the counterparty seller or third-party offeror in any manner. Example 2. Actual delivery will have occurred if, within 28 days of entering into a transaction, number 1, the counterparty seller has delivered the entire quantity of the virtual currency purchased, including any portion of the purchase made using leverage, margin, or financing, into the possession of a depository, i.e. wallet, or other relevant storage system, other than one owned, controlled, or operated by the counterparty seller, including any parent companies, partners, agents, affiliates, and others acting in concert with the counterparty seller. That's very non-specific, and it probably means you. That has entered into an agreement with the purchaser to hold virtual currency as agent for the purchaser without regard to any asserted interest of the offeror, counterparty seller, or persons acting in concert with the offeror or counterparty seller on a similar basis. Number 2. The counterparty seller has transferred title of the commodity to the purchaser. Number 3. the purchaser has secured full control over the virtual currency, i.e. the ability to immediately remove the full amount of purchased commodity from the depository. And 4, no liens or other interests of the offeror, counterparty seller, or persons acting in concert with the offeror or counterparty seller on a similar basis, resulting from the use of margin, leverage, or financing used to obtain the entire quantity of the commodity purchased will continue forward at the expiration of 28 days from the date of the transaction. And continuing on. Example 3. Actual delivery will not have occurred if within 28 days of entering in a transaction a book entry is made by the offeror or counterparty seller purporting to show that delivery of the virtual currency has been made to the purchaser, but the counterparty seller or offerer has not, in accordance with the methods described in Example 1 or Example 2, actually delivered the entire quantity of the virtual currency purchased, including any portion of the purchase made using leverage, margin, or financing, and transferred title to that quantity of the virtual currency to the purchaser, regardless of whether the agreement, contract, or transaction between the purchaser and the offerer or counterparty purports to create an enforceable obligation to deliver the commodity to the purchaser. Number 4. Actual delivery will not have occurred if, within 28 days of entering into a transaction, the agreement, contract, or transaction for the purchase or sale of virtual currency is rolled, offset against, netted out, or settled in cash or virtual currency other than the purchased virtual currency between the purchaser and the offerer or counterparty seller, or persons acting in concert with the offerer or counterparty seller. 3. Request for comment. The Commission requests comment from the public regarding the Commission's proposed interpretation of actual delivery in the context of virtual currency and further invites comments on specific questions related to the Commission's treatment of virtual currency transactions. The Commission encourages all comments, including background information, actual market examples, best practice principles, expectations for the possible impact on further innovation, and estimates of any asserted costs and expenses. Specifically, the Commission requests comment on the following questions. And I don't know if we're going to get to all of them. I mean, there's 5 pages of them, I think. But we did provide the the contact information for that at the beginning of this little read. It's kind of clear to me that with enough clarity, this could be used as a loose framework for regulating the types of things that a lot of people have been talking about, like this whole Lightning Network business. The Lightning Network, the payment channels, as far as I understand it, they have to be pre-financed. So, and that's supposedly within the 28-day period, although they can supposedly keep them open indefinitely, so we really don't know. And those are the kinds of questions that I would really want answered specifically, like, is every little node going to have to stay live? Is every little node, and I think the answer to that one is yes. I think they've already answered that one. Is the little node going to be part of, acting in concert according to the CFTC? Come on now. These are questions that we don't fucking have to answer with mining. It's pretty fucking clear that mining doesn't apply to this shit. But there's a group that wants to get things going to where this kind of regulation could certainly apply to it, because even if you do consider Bitcoin as a commodity, it could be regulated in under these ways. And I'm not opposed to that kind of thing in the greater stance of I expect that we're actually going to fulfill on the things that we say we can do. If we don't, then we are frauds and we are thieves, or we are just fucking stupid. And it takes the court to figure out whether one or all three apply. Anyway, it's with that I want to go ahead and close out this episode. It's certainly been a pleasure communicating the CFTC's latest perspective. I do kind of like reading their stuff. They at least bother to check it for grammatical errors, and I don't think I've caught too many in legislation, so it's always a good thing. But it is with that I want to go ahead and close this out. We will be back again Monday, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And so, until then, I want you all to trade safe. It promises to be a really exciting weekend. I want you to do your homework, because you don't want that excitement to be you losing money. I want you to watch out for your own bunghole, because try as they might, the CFTC really isn't going to be able to help you there. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook. You can also find me in the Telegram channel for Verge, and also the IRC channel for Verge. Thank you very much for listening. I'll do my best to get this up on my YouTube channel ASAP. You all have an excellent weekend. And it's with that, we're going to go ahead and close it out with The Whispers by Prong here on Coin Metal.